So good evening, everybody. My name is Christina. I'm with Atlantic Institute. I am here tonight. We're going to have a discussion. This is the month of April right now that we seem to have Easter, the month of Ramadan, and Passover, as well as the all three major Abrahamic faiths. It seems all of their religions are coming all together in this month. I usually always say an extra prayer for all of those people involved in all of the services and the different things that are involved, because it's quite a busy month and they are really tired by the end of it. And I think some of you can agree, because I know some of you are in the pastoral field. So I have with us tonight Dr. Peter Cohen, and he is representing Judaism. And we have Imam Huzaifa Hamarani, and he is the Imam from Greenville, representing Muslims and Islam. And what we have also is Gabe Lewis. He was not able to make it tonight. Usually he is here. He would be here, except their school. Let me just make sure I've got everybody muted. He teaches at St. Joseph's Catholic School, and their school suffered a loss this past week, and they are all in a state of grieving. And he asked if it was possible for him just to still participate, but to send a video of what Christianity believes, and specifically Catholicism, about Jesus. So I let him go. I told him that would be great. And what we're going to do is we're going to start off with his video. Let me go ahead and share my screen, because we are going to discuss what Muslims, Jews, and Christians believe regarding Jesus. We're going to start off with Gabe, and then we're going to go to Judaism with Dr. Peter Cohen, and then we're going to go to Islam with Imam Huzaifa, and then we'll have some questions and answers. So let me share my screen. And you should be able to see my screen now. All right. And I'm going to just go ahead and hit play.
Well, hello, everybody. I hope that this time it works, because last time, which was about 20 minutes ago, I recorded my whole talk, and then I was sending it to Christina and realized that I didn't hit unmute. Let's check again. It says I'm unmuted, so hopefully this time it works. My name is Gabe Lewis. I am the freshman theology teacher at St. Joseph's Catholic School. If you don't know where that is, it's the big grayish white school on the hill behind CarMax at 276 and 85 intersection. In addition to teaching theology, I am the campus minister, and this is my 9th year at St. Joe's. I'm from Ohio. I moved here for this job, and I am married to a wonderful woman, Megan. We have 3 children and a 4th on the way. So life is busy, and I'm unable to be there in person tonight. But I was grateful, I am grateful to Christina for inviting me to share the Catholic perspective on the question of who Jesus is. And I hope a video helps. I hope that you can take something from this witness of my experience that's helpful for whatever walk of faith you are in right now, because it's a journey for all of us, and none of us is there. We're walking and discovering. So who is Jesus of Nazareth for me as a Catholic? I speak now not as an expert, not as a theologian, an academic, not even as a teacher, I will share from my perspective as a man trying to live my life following what is truest in my experience and being loyal to what I know, while being always open to more understanding. So what I'm going to share now is rooted in my own experience, and I hope that you never hear any dismissing of another tradition or another's experience, because each of us can only learn and speak from within the realm of that crazy thing we call our own life. And that's where I'm speaking from. And what I read, what I learn about or listen to, only matters if I can confirm it in my own experience. So, who is Jesus of Nazareth for me as a Catholic? First of all, he is present. He is presence, not absence. And this kind of has a twofold meaning for me. He's a historical reality, a historical person, someone who lived at a certain time under a certain government in a certain geographical location, surrounded by people with real names. He is not a myth. And were that to be disproven, for me, the whole thing kind of falls apart, because he is, above all, a presence in history, but more importantly, in my own history, in my own story. A presence meaning someone I can know and I can bump up against and encounter. Those two words I probably will say often in these few minutes: encounter and presence. There's a poem that our students read freshman year by the poet Karl Lagerfeld. I believe he was a Nobel laureate at some time in the middle of the century. And he says, "Who are you that fill my heart with your absence?" Our experience of God is so often the experience of his absence. This last week at St. Joe's, where I work, we had a very difficult experience. There's a senior girl, Emily, who a week ago Tuesday died in a car accident, tragic car accident. This is Emily. She was a senior. She was a retreat leader on a retreat that I ran.
Real quick, I just want to say, Brittany, if you could mute yourself, that would be great.
I thought I was muted.
Nope. All right, thank you.
For the entire junior class, she was very involved in theater. She played cello, she sang, she drew, she wrote, she played softball. In fact, right before coming here, after I recorded my first attempt at this video, I was with Emily's former teammates, her softball team. They asked me to come and pray with them before their game, because it was the first game they were going to be playing without Emily on the team. And Emily was someone who was always looking out for people. And more we've realized that since her passing, with all the stories we've been hearing. And so this was an experience of what feels like the absence of God. Both her parents work at our school. Her sister graduated from here, and such a good family. And they lose their daughter when she's at the prime of her life, the doorstep of her future. There's a passage in the gospel where Jesus, who, like all rabbis, had his disciples. So he was a rabbi with his disciples, and they were out on a boat because his disciples were always taken from among the poor fishermen. They were all kind of a random group of people. But among them were some fishermen, and he's out with them on the boat, and a storm hits the sea. It's really a big lake. The Sea of Galilee is a huge lake. And the storm hits the sea, and the boat is rocking, and they fear for their lives. And they're confused because Jesus is with them, and yet there's this storm, and they wake him up. And he calms the storm just like I would calm my class. He says, "Enough," and the storm calms. And the last week for us has been like that storm where we're crying out, "Where are you?" Or as that poet said, "Who are you that fill my heart with your absence?" That's also how we identify as Christians. We identify so much with the Psalms of the Old Testament, what we call the Old Testament. This cry, "Out of the depths I cry to you, Lord. Lord, hear my voice. Have mercy on me, God, in your goodness and your abundant compassion." This feeling of the absence of God. And Christ is, for us, the presence of God. Like the presence of God in the temple or the cloud of presence above the tabernacle, Christ is the presence of God that we can encounter, that we can run up against. And this whole week we've been kind of testing out that faith. Is it really possible to run into his presence even in a situation like this? I know him kind of from two different directions. First, through the words of those I trust who have told me about him. So faith, this is a definition that I teach in my class. Faith is not strictly a religious term. To know by faith is any time that you know something, not through your own experience, but through the words of someone who you've deemed trustworthy. Someone who you think has wisdom and who cares about you. And so when they tell you something, you listen, even though you haven't experienced it yourself. You have faith. So that's the first way I come to know who Jesus is for me as a Catholic, is through the word, starting with, my parents when I was little. But above all, a few key people in my life. Whose words about who Christ is, the evidence that it was true was the witness of their life being different and being immensely attractive and full. So that's one way I come to know who he is, in the words of others. The other way is through my own experiences. Maybe I don't realize it at the time, but later looking back, I see, oh, that was his presence that I came across in that person or in this place or even in that book or in that chapel or in front of that sunset. So this is also how it plays out in the New Testament, in the Gospels. There are people, for example, in the first chapter of John, Andrew and John hear about Jesus from their friend or their teacher, John the Baptizer. And John says, pay attention to this guy. And because they trust John, they follow him, even though they don't know Jesus yet. They just know John is trustworthy. So they follow Jesus, and then they stay with him, and they have their own experience. And when they come home, they're different. Their wives can see it. Their friends can see it. Their siblings can see it. There's something different in your eyes. You're more you. after being with that man. You're more yourself. You're more caring. You're more open. You're more sure. You're more human. It's in the eyes, especially, that you can see that someone has encountered a friend that has changed the direction of their life. That was a teaching that our previous Pope, Pope Benedict XVI, said, and our current Pope has made it like the life of his teaching. I'm of the opinion that Francis, our current Pope, is an unbelievable gift for the church and probably for the world. There are many who are in my own faith tradition who are very skeptical of him and who feel that he's in conflict with his predecessors. I don't see it that way. The teaching that Pope Benedict said and that Francis has made his core to his teaching is being a Christian is not the result of an ethical choice or a set of ideas. It's the encounter with an event, with a person that changes the horizon of my life. So as a Catholic, there are moments that I look at in my life where I see I've met the presence of God, and it's changed me. It's changed the direction of my life. Not a result of something I chose or some decision I made or some quality I have or any gift or anything like that, but because of meeting another. How, as a Catholic, do I believe I can run up against the presence of Christ, especially in the community of those who have been changed by him? That's what the church is for us. It's the community of those people, random, poor, hungry, rich, important, unimportant, it doesn't matter. Those who have had an experience of the presence of God in Christ. But also any experience that brings freedom and peace and an increase in charity and mercy is God, is the presence of God. This time that we're about to live in Holy Week is for us, it's like a time when at least I find myself experiencing such a union with the roots of my Catholic faith in the people of Israel, waiting for a Messiah, an anointed one, waiting, crying out with the Psalms, with the prophets, crying out for justice for the oppressed, peace, for forgiveness and mercy. And for us, Christ is that Messiah, which means anointed one, the king who was to come to restore the lost tribes of Israel, those who had gone afar, to break the cycle of the vicious cycles of suffering, of oppression, of, on a more personal level, addiction, and ultimately the cycle of death. The one who accomplishes this work not by power, and not with force. And any time that the church has relied on those things, it's caused great scandal and becomes a stumbling block. Rather, Christ accomplishes his work, I believe, through humility, poverty, charity, generosity, mercy, obedience. And those become sort of the signs of his presence in the world, not not works of power or wonder, but the greater miracle of a changed heart, of a heart made kind and good. And Emily, this girl who passed away, she was, I believe, holy. She had a lot of struggles. She was someone who was always searching.
If you guys, hold on.
Skull earrings. And if it's a correction that we do not judge the presence of God by.
You could give me 1 second if everybody could make sure they're muted. That would be great. SK, I know we're not muted at this moment. And it's much easier if you could just mute versus me having to go out of the screen share and then back in. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Externals, because all these stories emerge of her seeking out the lost, her seeking out kids who didn't have a friend, checking in on those who seemed to be having a hard day. She was so certain in the love of God and became for our school the face of God. And as a Catholic, we name that. We say that's Christ. That's the presence of God. God coming to be with me in a human face, in a human tenderness. No less powerful, no less mysterious, no less majestic, but close. Someone I can hear, someone I can touch, someone I can be touched by and be moved by. And the tenderness and mercy of God in person is who we believe Jesus revealed himself to be. So that's a little of my experience of who Jesus is for me as a Catholic. I apologize for being kind of all over the place there. It's very existential right now. I beg of your goodwill as you hear these words. I hope to hear later, maybe perhaps in a recording or from Christina, to hear what you all had to say. I know I can learn so much. And again, thank you and have a blessed evening. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you all for sitting and listening to that. I think I could personally, I know when I was watching this a little bit ago, I only got it about 10 minutes before we started tonight, so I didn't have a chance to watch the whole thing. But I could see some of the pain and grief on his face. So I thought it was kind of probably cathartic for him to come and speak for all of us. So if I can now turn this evening over to Dr. Peter Cohen, and he can share his thoughts with all of us.
Thank you. Let me begin I begin all my classes by saying, whatever anyone believes in their heart is sacred, it's important, and I would never question it. I got my master's degree in biblical studies. I have taught the New Testament. I understand it, as well as the Hebrew Bible. And I'll speak from the Jewish perspective, not my perspective necessarily, which I think is important. And I can share from my perspective if you have any specific questions. Most Jews, if not the vast majority, have never read the New Testament. They don't think it's an important book. And unfortunately, the same with the Quran. They have not read that. I've read both and think they're both important. In Judaism, Jews do not believe the Messiah has yet come. They're waiting for the Messiah. I very often talk about the differences between the three different traditions, many more things alike, but the differences within the concept of prophets and prophecy. In Judaism, the prophets and prophecy, they act as analysts. When they talk about what is going to happen, they talk about, because of the people's actions at a particular time, things are going to happen. They will be punished if they have been disobedient. And it's not 100, 200, 800 years later. It's within the purview of that generation. For instance, Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14, which is quoted in Matthew, is a very important passage. It says that a virgin shall go forth and conceive a child, and you shall call his name Emmanuel. Well, first of all, that is not an exact translation of that from the Hebrew. It's more from the Greek, which is a later translation. It says a young woman, because there's no concept of virgin birth in ancient Israel. There is a miraculous birth. Sarah gives birth at 90 years old, but never does it say that she was a virgin. It's because God opened her womb that she was able to give birth. And I learned from one of my professors, a very easy lesson, that if you want to find out when the prophet's message comes true from the standpoint of ancient Israel, it's very simple. You keep reading. And in the very next chapter, chapter 8, verse 1, a child is born. And the child's name happens to be the longest name in the Bible, Maher Shalal Hashbaz. And he's expected to be a figure to help the people. And that's what Emmanuel means. The only other figure that's mentioned in the Hebrew Bible with the title Messiah is the King of Persia. When they beat the Babylonians, he has two particular very important political policies: that he would allow the people who have been displaced, refugee populations, to return to their homeland. And he would also allow them to build their holy sites back up. And he actually gave money to the ancient Israelites to rebuild the temple. So from the standpoint of ancient Israel at the time, he was seen as an anointed one, Mashiach. And what anointed means is very simply, not simple, but one who has been chosen for a task, a special task. And he is seen as very special because he allowed them to return. So for the standpoint of ancient Israel and modern Judaism, the Messiah has yet to come. Jesus is not seen as the Son of God. And the way I see him, and I do and have read the New Testament many, many times, is he is a learned person who was a Jew his whole life. He never even moved away from that. He never spoke against Judaism. What he did was speak against factions within Judaism, the Sadducees and the Pharisees. And what upset them was the fact that he had a better interpretation of the Jewish law than they did. When they asked him, what do you feel about this? He gave a better explanation, even today, than the other people did, who were much more learned than him. He was a carpenter, and they didn't know where he was getting his authority from. There's many other things that come up with respect to him. I view him as a very learned person. However, there is almost no historical proof that Jesus in fact existed. That doesn't mean he didn't, please don't get me wrong, because there's about the same amount that Abraham didn't or Moses didn't exist. The New Testament is one of the only places that talks about the existence of Jesus of Nazareth. Now, his teachings are incredibly important. I would never say anything other than that. For instance, this time of year, it's interesting to note that Jesus never talks about the Last Supper. Never. What he does is he tells the people, his disciples, to go ahead to Jerusalem and prepare the feast. And the feast that he's speaking of is the first meal of Passover, which is called the Seder, the Passover meal. And this is well within the rituals within Judaism. He corrects people who are not following the law properly. And it's very important to note those things. He is a very interesting figure, I think. But as I said before, Jews pretty much have never read the New Testament and don't consider him an important or historical figure at all. Much I can say the same, unfortunately, mind you. And I always ask my classes, how many of you have read the Quran? Because it's made primarily of Christians. And never have I found one that has read the Quran from beginning to end, nor have they understood many of the passages that people quote in the Quran. There's many things that occur in the New Testament with Jesus that don't make sense also. For instance, never would the Sanhedrin, the high Jewish court, would meet during the holiday of Passover. Never, period. Wouldn't happen. Secondly, never would someone be tried and sentenced on the same day. It was against Jewish law, always was. And for someone tried for capital crime, it would take witnesses, as the Talmud, the Code of Jewish Law says, to report how many olives were on the tree behind the person who witnessed something. Very, very high stakes, you might say. Now, that's not to say that some people interpret the stories. What I always say to my classes is every translation is an interpretation. So what we have with the first century Christians are interpreting the prophets from ancient Israel 600, 700, and 800 years earlier as saying that they're speaking to them. Whereas ancient Israel is saying, no, the prophecy's already come true. And then when we jump ahead, just mention one thing about Islam, is that in the 7th century, we have Muhammad finally being the seal of the prophets. And what he says from Allah is the message. So Jesus is this figure that is controversial within Judaism and not taken seriously. I hate to say that because I take him seriously. And as I said at the beginning, what people believe is the most important thing. What they have in their heart is the most important thing. For instance, in Judaism, there are only in later Judaism that the concept of life after death come in. And many Jews don't believe in the concept of life after death. So there's a lot to take into consideration when you're doing that, looking at things. And that idea of interpretation is incredibly important for Jews, for Christians, and for Muslims. Okay.
Thank you, Peter. I appreciate it. Thank you very much for that perspective. I actually don't think in all the work that we've done in the past 10 years that I've actually heard some of that perspective. So I appreciate that. And I'm sure we'll have some questions on that in a little bit.
Mhm.
I was trying to stop tonight by sundown so that the imam could break his fast. So I think I know I might be a little bit over. Um, so I want to apologize.
No, it's okay.
Um, so I am trying to keep that in mind this evening. But if you could introduce yourself, Imam Zaifa. I don't know if very many people know you or know about you a little bit first. And then if you would like to go ahead and share with us what Muslims believe regarding Jesus.
So my name is Huzaifa. I actually grew up in St. Louis, Missouri. I attended school there. I graduated high school there from a public high school. After I graduated, I decided to go study about my faith. First, it took me to California. I was studying in California in Berkeley. And then from there, I was accepted to go study in what we call the city of Medina, which is the city where the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, migrated after he was exiled from Mecca. And so I studied about 6 years there. I studied 2 years of Arabic and then 4 years of Islamic law, theology, and a multitude of different subjects related to my faith in particular. Today, the question that we have is, who is Jesus? And who is Jesus to Muslims? It's sort of a strange question because usually when you think of Jesus of Nazareth, or Isa, as we call him, peace be upon him, you might think Christianity. But for us as Muslims, and from my perspective, with all due respect today, we also believe in the Prophet Jesus. But then the question comes is, wow, you actually believe in the Prophet Jesus? Then why Islam? What is so different about your belief and the understanding of the Jewish tradition and the understanding of the Catholic and Christian tradition? And so the best way for me to actually answer that question is to read to you some passages of the Quran and to let Jesus himself introduce himself. And that's the best way that I can think of doing, because my words are merely my words, but it's better if the source himself reveals himself. And so I'm going to read the verses in Arabic and simultaneously translate for you because I feel like it's more effective that way. And I'll try to do it within my 8-minute span. So just to begin with. وَاذْكُرْ فِي الْكِتَابِ مَرْيَمَ, and remember the story of Mary. إِذِ انْتَبَذَتْ مِنْ أَهْلِهَا مَكَانًا شَرْقِيًّا, that she took refuge in an eastern place, in an eastern land. فَاتَّخَذَتْ مِنْ دُونِهِمْ حِجَابًا, that she covered herself. And during that covering, فَأَرْسَلْنَا إِلَيْهَا رُوحَنَا, that we sent our spirit. The spirit that's being referred to over here is none other than the archangel we call Jibreel or Gabriel. And he comes to her, فَتَمَثَّلَ لَهَا بَشَرًا سَوِيًّا, and he makes himself, or he shapes himself, or he's shaped into the shape of a man. And generally, when a man would come up to a woman like that in a society, and the woman doesn't know him, and the man doesn't know her, the automatic reaction is that something bad might happen. And so she says, Inni a'udhu bir-Rahman, that I seek refuge with my Lord, the most merciful, minka in kunta taqiyya, from you if you are a truly pious person, meaning she's afraid something bad is going to happen to her. And then he responds and he says, Innama ana rasulu rabbik, that I am simply a messenger of God. I am simply an angel from God. لِأَهَبَ لَكِ غُلَامًا زَكِيًّا, I'm about to give you a child, a righteous child. And she's not married. She's a virgin. And she's thinking all of these things in her head. And she goes, how can I have a child? How can I have a child when no man has ever touched me and I'm not a prostitute? So this is the thought that's going in her head. And she's saying this to him. And the angel responds, هُوَ عَلَيَّ هَيِّنٌ, this affair of you having a child is something that's so easy on God. If he says be, it is. And so what does the angel say? He says that we will make this child a sign for all of mankind and a mercy from us. And it will be a matter that's been already decreed. And so she has the child and she retreats to a place in the east. They say it's about 4 to 6 miles from Bethlehem. And then God tells her during her pregnancy and during delivery, he says, grab onto the palm tree and shake it, meaning use your own effort, Mary, don't give up. And she begins to shake it. And then she hears a voice from under her saying that there will come a stream of water and dates for you. So enjoy and rejoice. And through all of the pain, she says, I wish that I was forgotten. I wish that I never existed, because of the pain that a mother has to go through when having a child. And after all of this happens, God says, eat and drink and relax, O Mary. And then the people, they see this, and the people, they come and they're like, a woman having a child, she's not married, she doesn't have a spouse. And so now they're all thinking and they're all having these thoughts in their mind. And so what does she say? She says, Inni nadartu lirrahmani sawma. That she says, I am fasting. I have sworn an oath to fast by God. And their fasting is different from the Muslim fasting. The people of that time would fast even from speech. فَلَنْ أُكَلِّمَ الْيَوْمَ إِنْسِيًّا. I'm not even going to speak today. And they would fast from speech because of the idea of falling into backbiting, lying, or all of the different sins that could possibly happen on the tongue. And so the people, they come to her and they say, oh, Mary, you've done something outrageous. Oh, sister of Aaron, and this is not Aaron, the brother of Moses, but the actual brother of Mary. She says that they say to her that your father was a good man and your mother, she was a good woman. And so Mary, she doesn't respond to any of this, and she simply points. And as she points to that child, everybody says, كيف نكلم من كان في المهد صبيا? How can we speak to a child who's simply in the cradle? And now Jesus comes into the picture in the form of a baby. He introduces himself and he says, Inni Abdullah, that I am the servant of God. Atani al-kitab, I have been given the gospels. Waj'alani nabiyya, and I have been made a viceroy, a prophet of God. Waj'alani mubarakan aynama kunt, and I have been made blessed wherever I am. وَأَوْصَانِي بِالصَّلَاةِ, and I have been advised by God for prayer, to pray, وَالزَّكَاةِ, to give alms and charity and take care of the poor, مَا دُمْتُ حَيًّا, as long as I am alive. And then he says, وَبَرًّا بِوَالِدَتِي, that I am commanded to be good to my mother, and to be righteous to my mother, and to be dutiful towards my mother. And God did not make me an arrogant person or treacherous or be somebody who's a miser. And then he says, peace be upon me the day I was born, the day I shall pass, and the day I shall rise again. And then the passage finishes, and God, he says, and that is Jesus, the son of Mary, the truth which they contradict and they argue and they debate about. It is not for God to take a son. God is far above that. Glory be to God, that when he decrees an affair, meaning when he decrees the creation of Jesus, it is so. Just like God can create Adam without a mother and father, God can certainly create Jesus, the son of Mary, the man of Nazareth, without a father. And so for us as Muslims, very simply, Jesus is an honored prophet of God. He is somebody who we respect, somebody who we love, somebody who we believe in, but yet we also say that he is a prophet of God, similar to the way that Muhammad, similar to the way that Moses and Adam and Noah and many of the prophets that came before, all of them came with one central mission, and that was to connect humanity, to take humanity out of the worship of the created into the worship of the ultimate creator. And I hope that sort of responds to the question of who Jesus is. We also believe in the miracles of Jesus. We believe that he was able to bring back the dead, and that he was able to take clay items and sculptures and make them into birds, and cure the leopards and cure the blind, and so on and so forth, but all as miracles that God enabled Jesus to do, similar to the way that God enabled Moses to split the sea and enabled Muhammad to split the moon, and so on and so forth. I hope that gives everyone an accurate representation of who Jesus is. He's a prophet of God. Don't believe he's the son of God, with all due respect. That's pretty much what it is.
Very good. Thank you very much, Imam. I appreciate that. I would like to thank you very much for speaking it in Arabic and then English. I think it was very beautiful, the way it all connected. And so that was a very good choice. I appreciate that. Oh, questions. I'm sure there are some questions that we have here. And Pamela Smith has agreed that she would help with any questions regarding Gabe's conversation in the beginning on Christianity and Catholicism. So if we have any questions in the beginning on that, you guys are welcome to ask that as well. So thank you very much, Pamela, for helping with that. In fact, what I'm probably going to do is, so if you have questions and you would like to, I'm going to pin for a second. Sometimes we just don't get this fast enough. Pin spotlight for everyone. All right, we're going to spotlight Peter, and we're going to spotlight the Imam. Oh, goodness. I don't know where my, hold on, I'm just trying to find where he was at. There we go. I'm going to add him to spotlight. There we go. That took a hot minute. All right. So I would like to go ahead and go ahead and see if anybody has any questions. And Pamela, if you don't mind, I'm going to add you into the spotlight here, just so that we can all have a central viewing of whoever we have questions for. If you would like to go ahead and unmute, or you can put a question in the chat, that would be fine. You can go ahead and unmute yourself or raise your hand, and I can go ahead and call on you to ask a question. And I know we have about like 3 or 4 minutes. Well, I mean, we can ask questions. I know we have about 3 minutes or so until iftar time, or fast breaking time. But there was a lot in that conversation.
Maybe I can start with a
I
question
was
for
going to say, go ahead. I was like, go ahead.
And my impression from reading the Quran, which I have read, but it's been quite a while back, is that Jesus is honored as a prophet, as are a number of other figures who appear in the Hebrew Bible, and that there's also a certain level of respect for Mary, his mother, but that Muhammad is the prime prophet. The others are lesser prophets, or Muhammad is the fulfillment of prophets. Would that be an appropriate way to say it? You're muted.
I'm going to unmute you.
Yeah.
Yep, go ahead and unmute.
Okay, so there's actually a verse in the Quran which is لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله, that we don't differentiate or distinguish between the prophets of God. To us, they're all equal. Their main primary mission is to connect the creation to the creator, and to get rid of that middleman, or that imam, that priest, that rabbi. It's you and God. Nobody else is in the middle. And so for us as Muslims, it's funny that you mentioned that you read about Mary and you read about all of these figures. There's only one woman mentioned by name in the Quran explicitly, and that is Mary, Maryam, in Arabic. And in fact, the one of the purposes of Islam, or the Quran, which the Quran has a threefold purpose, but one of its main purposes is to correct the historical narrative, at least according to Muslims, that was corrupted through either the transition of time, or through the hands of men, or through just the fact that there is no, what we call an an oral tradition that's actually connected with an actual chain or a reliable chain. And so Islam and Quran in particular, it comes to say that, hey, Noah wasn't a drunkard. Moses wasn't this way. Jesus wasn't this way. This is how they actually were. And so for us as Muslims, we honor all of the prophets. And like I said, their main purpose, even Muhammad, is just to connect people back to God. And the advent of Muhammad, it might be a natural question, why Muhammad? Why can't you just stop at Jesus or Moses or so on and so forth? Is because of all of the corruption that came at the hands of man, the changing of time, the changing of history, and all of these different things, that it became necessary and for the Prophet Muhammad to come in order to bring people back to the actual narrative of Jesus, to the actual narrative of Moses. That's the main purpose. Otherwise, Muhammad, like when he passed away, the first caliph of Islam, he got up and he said that Muhammad was but a man. Muhammad was but a man. Like, we love him, we respect him, we honor him. He is the seal of the prophets. But at the same time, he said Muhammad was a man, but God is ever living and ever existing. And so for us as human beings, the prophets, we honor them, we exalt them. But at the end of the day, you and me, we're not answering to Jesus or Muhammad or Moses or any of the prophets. We're answering directly to God. We can call him the Father, we can call him whatever you want. And there are many names throughout history, but we're answering to God alone. And so that's where the connection sort of comes in.
Couple of things there. I agree with completely. In Judaism, a rabbi is not an intermediary. One's relationship is directly with God, and very much like an imam, for instance, a teacher more than anything else.
I was going to say one of the first things I remember 10 years ago when I started working at Atlantic Institute was I came in during the time of Noah's Pudding, and I was raised a very conservative Christian faith growing up, and I did not know about all of the other faiths, believe it or not. And I'm still 10 years doing this and learning still very much about many different faiths. And I think that makes me probably better at doing this since I don't have any knowledge. And I'm always constantly learning. But Keith was telling me stories in the Quran about Noah's Pudding, about Noah and Noah's Ark, and about what Noah's Pudding was. And I thought that was so interesting because I did not remember any of that from the Bible. And it's been interesting for me over the past decade to learn certain things that are in the Torah and certain things that are in the Quran and how they relate, and how they all come together. And so I've always very much appreciated all of the sharing, all of the learning that we do, understanding of the Bible has certain stories, and like the Quran has certain stories, and like the Torah has stories, and it's very interesting to me to hear them all come together and the bigger picture that they make.
May I ask a question? I've had my hand up. Are we doing that? Or
Yes. I'm sorry. I only have everybody across the top, so I didn't see everybody.
Oh, okay. So this is a question for our Islamic speaker. And I don't know if it's okay for me to bring some other religions in here, but his description of Islam sounded very much like my understanding of the Baha'i faith, which also sees all of the prophets of all of the major faiths, including Buddha, for instance, as all being messengers from the same one God. And so I'm wondering if he can speak to, I don't know how familiar he is with the Baha'i faith, but is there a difference between how Islam sees the kind of the unity of all the major prophets versus Baha'i, and does Islam also recognize Buddha and the prophets of any other major faiths?
So to answer your question in frank terms, you have to know the historical transition of how religions came. And so the Baha'i faith is relatively new. It's a culmination of multiple faiths. And so if you look at the Baha'i faith, it's mostly in the subcontinent area. It's in the East Asian countries. And so, Okay, it's in the subcontinent, Pakistan, India, South Asian countries. If somebody's mic is on, could they turn it off, please?
Yeah,
And so a lot of their understandings of things are actually taken from Islam, taken from Hinduism, taken from Buddhism. And so they're more of a culmination of multiple faiths and identities coming into one. And so you could say that if Judaism is the source of Christianity, Christianity is the source of Islam, and so on and so forth, you would say Baha'i is the source of multiple faiths. Or sorry, Baha'i takes from the source of multiple faiths. And that is not to degrade anybody's faith or anything like that, or to look at it in a certain way, but it's what is historically accurate, and you can do your own research. But it is very similar in that sense. In terms of Buddha being a prophet, in terms of those other figures, we have theories, but for us as Muslims, we say that there are only 25 mentioned in the Quran and in the tradition of the Prophet of God, and those that correspond to what is in the Old Testament and in the New Testament. And so we affirm those. Any other prophets, we believe there are 124,000 prophets, so it is possible that those people are prophets. However, we would look at the message again. Is the message the same exact as Jesus, as Moses, as Muhammad? If they tell you that there is a God of light and a God of darkness, Jesus never said that. Moses never said that. Muhammad never said that.
Right.
And so you have to understand that area of the world is very influenced with Hinduism, with Zoroastrianism, with a lot of the different faiths. And so Zoroastrianism actually is an ancient Persian faith, and that actually has a lot to do with the Baha'i faith. And so there's a lot more history, and a basic world religions class usually teaches people about those things. I hope that sort of answered the question.
Yes, thank you very much.
No
Very
problem,
good.
my pleasure.
Could I interject just kind of a point here? I think one of the things that probably needs to be said, and really hasn't come up yet, but one of the key differences, of course, is Christianity, Catholicism claim God is one, but the very different interpretation of that is in looking at Jesus as being both divine and human simultaneously, and believing in the Holy Spirit as a person of God. We've got this whole thing we call a mystery, which is that God is one, but by nature relational, so that we talk about three persons of God, which is very far into Judaism and Islam. That is not something you would run into there. And so that for Christianity, Jesus is rabbi, prophet, teacher, savior, all kinds of terms we give, but also the divine dimension, which is very distinct from Judaism and Islam.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Imam, but there's a part of a passage in the Quran that says, say not three.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is a direct.
I've seen it.
Yeah. And Judaism, of course, is, they have different names for God, as does Islam with attributes for God, but only one.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very good. Thank you. I had one last question over here. I don't know. I'm not familiar with what this is. And it says, what is Imam for? What is 5 under the cloak? I don't know what that is. Is that a question that relates to this?
What?
5 under the cloak. I don't know what that means.
Okay.
Could you repeat that?
What is 5 under the cloak? But I don't know what that is. So I'm not quite sure what that would relate to. I thought maybe that might ring a bell. But I do want to end here in a minute. I want to thank you guys very much for being here. I want to just try to respect some of the time this is the fast breaking time about 2 minutes ago. And I'd like to let you please go eat and drink. It would make me feel very happy.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I feel very selfish not stopping yet. So I'd like to go ahead and thank everybody for being here tonight. Thank you very much for participating in this conversation with all of us. This will be on YouTube tomorrow. So if you have any friends that you have and you'd like to share with them, you can. And if you have any questions that come up that maybe we did not touch on, you can feel free to email me and I can help share them with some of those, one of the speakers here tonight. And our hearts will go out to Gabe and St. Joseph's Catholic School for their loss that they experienced this week. And I appreciate that he was able to still participate. I think that was probably very cathartic for him to still give some sort of token of his thoughts with us. So I'd like to thank you guys. And
Christine, if you would like to, I feel comfortable if you want to include my email address
okay,
in the recording.
Okay.
It's fine if someone wants to contact me directly. And looking forward to meeting you, Imam, definitely.
Likewise, likewise.
It's pcohen@clemson.edu, right?
Correct.
I will type it right here so everybody can see what that is. And so we thank you very much. I just want to thank you very much, and please have a happy fast breaking.
Yes, thank you.
Yes. All right.
Take
You guys
care,
have a good
everybody.
evening.
Thank you, everyone. Peter, thanks so much.